Matthew Mandell has been the executive director and president of the Westport-Weston Chamber of Commerce for the past 8 years. There were 120 members when Matthew took over. Now there are more than 325. Matthew added events like Slice of Saugatuck, Dog Festival, food contests, and the Supper and Soul dinner and concert series that take place right here in the Westport Library. Matthew's also a 17-year member of the Westport RTM and longtime chair of its Planning and Zoning Subcommittee. An avid preservationist, Matthew helped save the 22-acre Partridge wetlands, the 5-acre White Barn Theater Preserve, the 11-acre Norden property, and the building now housing Serena and Lily. And Matthew's been an Earth Place board member since 2007. Welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate coming here.
Sure. We've got a lot to talk about. But let's start in 1972. You met your future wife when you were how old?
I was 12.
And you were in Westport?
Yeah, my mom wanted to spend a summer in Westport. I think she had a boyfriend at that time, and so we followed him up here. And sort of a strange confluence brought me to Saugatuck then and has me in Saugatuck mostly now with the things that I do. But I went to day camp, became friends with her older brother, and so we hung out a whole bunch. And there was this little 7-year-old girl who would hang out with us, and the rule was if you could keep up, you could hang out with us, and so she did. And then, of course, our family became friendly over the long haul, and years later, I got reacquainted with her, and we started dating, and there we go.
Wow. So
it was an interesting, Westport-centric thing.
A Westport romance. But you didn't move here permanently until 2005.
That's correct. I started dating her in about 1987 and coming up on weekends because they had the house here on Partridge Road. And so we started dating, hang out, married, had children, and then decided to move from the Bronx up here in 2005.
And during all that time, you were just waiting and dreaming of becoming president of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, that was sort of by accident. As an RTM member, I was looking at Saugatuck as it was changing and created the Slice of Saugatuck as an RTM member, ran it for a couple of years, and I handed it to the Chamber of Commerce thinking it was better for them to run. Ultimately, the Chamber changed direction again and changed directors, actually, a number of times. And I had an interview with the board of directors talking about how to reignite the Slice of Saugatuck. And they said, well, do you want to run it? And I said, well, run the Slice of Saugatuck? They said, no, do you want to run the Chamber? And I was like, oh, this has been a job interview. And they said, yeah. And so I took it. And that was, 2014. And so I've been there since and really enjoy it. A hands-on job for sure.
So what does the Chamber do?
The Chamber is the chief cheerleader of the town, I believe. That's how I run it, at least. Most chambers are just basically business to business, and how can we help the businesses that way? And I thought it would be better to delve into the community and bring the people out of the community to the businesses. And that's where we created, just not the Slice of Saugatuck, where 2,000 people come to the doorstep of each of those businesses, or the Dog Festival, where we have 60 vendors and they come to see the businesses. So that's what I created, a change in the dynamic, which is more consumer to business than just business to business. And it's worked.
So this is not, the Chamber has always had sort of nationally the image of business. What's good for GM is good for the country. It's sort of the Republican business philosophy. And are there other chambers like this, or are you sort of reinventing the model?
I think I'm reinventing the model, and a lot of them are coming to me and saying, what are you doing? How can we do the similar things, such as Supper and Soul, which takes place right on this stage now, where we have national touring acts come and play music in this beautiful venue. And hats off to the Verso Studio guys for helping you do this and helping us do Supper and Soul. What a magnificent thing for the town to have. But changing chambers, yeah, I think I've made a difference in the model. And I think it works. Just one thing is, we're not associated with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce at all. I consider it's a political organization, and we're not a political organization. We are a Westport organization, and we keep to that.
So it seems like you're trying to strike a balance between business and the lifestyle of Westport, the residents of Westport, connecting the businesses with the people and vice versa.
Right, exactly. Get them to intermingle, and it helps the businesses out, and it also helps the residents because it gives them a sense of place. What can we do this weekend? Hey, let's go to Supper and Soul. What are we going to do this weekend? Let's go to the Dog Festival, Slice of Saugatuck, or the Halloween window painting contest where the kids come out and paint the windows. It's all the different things that we do that make the town better.
So how would you characterize the business climate in Westport right now?
It's excellent. We are doing so much better than some of the other towns around. Even during the pandemic, we rose to the occasion and did better. I mean, one of the things that occurred, the Amazon effect was occurring already on Main Street, where the national chains were feeling the pressure and were beginning to buckle a little bit. Once the pandemic came, the prices on the street dropped, and a whole bunch of new entrepreneurs, what colloquially is called the mom and pops, showed up. And now downtown is exceedingly vibrant, whereas Greenwich still has a lot of closed and shuttered stores, and we don't have that.
Can you give me some examples? Like what's one of these new vibrant places or something?
Well, I think some of the restaurants coming in, Mexicu's down there, Casa Mi is coming in. I mean, restaurants I consider to be the most unique aspects of any town because anybody can be selling shirts and ties and sneakers, but the food that's offered is usually unique and really loved by the people who are doing it. They're stars unto themselves, making the food, and so they present it to people, and I think that's real important, and that's what creates the uniqueness.
You were here in 1972. You didn't partake in the nightlife, but as you got older, you knew that there were bars and there were music clubs and all that. We don't have that in Westport anymore. We don't have that. We don't have the movie theaters. Is there a chance of getting that back? Is there something that's taken its place? I know you're a cheerleader, but I want you to, talk about that lack of nightlife.
Well, the lack of nightlife is not being seen in the restaurant world. It is, and the restaurants are often packed, and they're doing well. In terms of music, that's a difficult situation. You have a lot of music venues around in Norwalk and in Fairfield. And so people are going there. Whether or not we can have one here, we did have one down at the old Arrow where it became the Blue Parrot.
The Blue Parrot.
The Blue Parrot was the name of it. Right, Jasmine's. Wasn't that the Arrow before Jasmine's? Yeah. So back in 1972, it was the Arrow. So if we go back that far, and my memory serves, if it can go back that far. But that was a dinner and concert venue, and it was doing well, but ultimately didn't make it for whatever reason. So I can't answer, how can we create better nightlife that way? This town does seem to close up about 10 o'clock. In weekends, maybe you get 11 o'clock. You drive through Saugatuck and what was vibrant at 8 o'clock with people walking all over the streets. It's quiet. I mean, I always thought that you could have some dessert venues. So you eat dinner in one place and then walk over to, an Italian pastry shop, sort of what you have on the Lower East Side a little with some of the Italian places down there.
La Fenice.
I mean, that would be helpful, but it's not quite the nightlife. And, I don't know who's there to do it in terms of families. We are a family-oriented town. We're a bedroom community. And so that's the rub. One thing I did do as an RTM member was, and I was approached by my buddies at Viva Zapata's, was on 3-day weekends, Sunday nights, they had to close early. And the reason being is that Westport had sort of an antiquated liquor rule. They had two of those. One of them was that you couldn't have liquor stores closer than 1,500 feet. And that created a problem with getting a critical mass of people together. That was changed somewhere in the early 2000s by the Planning and Zoning Commission at the time. And suddenly you had more restaurants closer together, all serving liquor, and that created the boon for Saugatuck, essentially. But what I did was approached by them saying, how come we have to close early? Because the law in Westport was you couldn't serve liquor on a Sunday past 9 p.m. The problem is on a 3-day weekend, a Sunday night is like a Saturday night. And so everybody was hopping and going over to Fairfield and Norwalk and not staying in Westport. So I created an ordinance that would allow for on 3-day weekends when there's a federal holiday on a Monday or a federal holiday where it worked perfectly into the situation, they would be allowed to stay open to the state rules, which is 11 o'clock. And that has been helpful to many of the restaurants to help create a little more nightlife, at least on those 4 or 5 Sunday nights during the year.
Sure. It's interesting. You mentioned the 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock sort of dies. The Jazz at the Post, which is really every Thursday night at the VFW on Riverside Avenue, they have shows at 7:30 and 8:45. So they're over at 10 o'clock. And that works well for Westport, but the jazz musicians say, 10 o'clock, we're just getting started. We don't know what to do.
I went to a CBGB show. I showed up at midnight when they said it was going to be on, and my buddies didn't go on until 2 a.m.
There you go.
So, we're not CBGBs, but I see the point.
We're not CBGBs.
Yeah.
We've been talking about downtown and Saugatuck. From a business point of view, are they two different neighborhoods or areas? Are they in competition? Do they somehow mesh together? What do you think?
They are two different worlds. They don't compete. They're a collaboration because you can get different things in different places. One thing that I will remark about Saugatuck is there are really no chain stores down there at all.
Dunkin'.
Except for Dunkin'. And their sign is not the plastic backlit sign. It's a wooden sign because I had gone to them and I said, hey, you're going to be the only national chain in this area. Can you please look like the rest of the wood that's there? And he goes, let me see. 3 days later, he presented a plan to planning and zoning. We all sat down, looked at it and said, looks great. So it's a different place down in Saugatuck. It's intimate, it's smaller. There may be a big change coming, we don't know, but at the moment it's really firing on all cylinders. Railroad Place has the 4 restaurants together with the outdoor dining, and that's one thing. Downtown is more of a shopping destination. You have Main Street with all the different stores and shops, and they're all doing fine. And as I said, a lot of more mom and pops are in there to give you a greater opportunity. You don't have to just be going to the Gap or one of those other ones. Now you can get more personal touch, and I think that's really helpful.
You mentioned changes coming to Saugatuck, the Hamlet proposal, residential, retail, hotel. It's big. It's the height and the setbacks have caused a bit of controversy. At the same time, it would replace really some rundown, sort of shabby-looking stuff that's there now. It's right by the train station, so people could, come off the train. Traffic issues. What's your thought on Hamlet at Saugatuck?
Well, as the chair of the Planning and Zoning Committee of the RTM, we ultimately may have oversight on it because we have a town code that allows an appeal to the RTM if that's the case. My position, and I've spoken a number of times at the public hearings, is change there is inevitable. It's actually necessary for some of the area. As you said, the corrugated metal roof on Morton's parking lot is an eyesore. But Saugatuck is not the eyesore that people say that it looks awful and stuff. But, certain pieces are. My position has been, I like the idea. I think a hotel down there would be good. I'd love more access to the water. But I've said a number of times the height is an issue. The Sloat building, the one lone building that's up there, was approved in 1969 at 60 feet. Somehow it got built to 76 feet and then given the okay.
For those who don't know, the Sloat building is also known as the ugliest building in Westport.
Absolutely, and no one understands what that piece of art on the side is. But they're going to reskin it and make it look better. It is a matter of how much can it bear down there. in terms of height and girth, and then what precedent is set that once we go and create 11 buildings that are 50, 55, maybe even 65 feet tall, what does that do? One owner down there came and said, I don't really like this idea. I think you're going to be changing it too much. But if you do it, I want in too. And he has property elsewhere. So that's an interesting thing that has to be weighed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. What precedent are you setting? I think something will be approved down there. I'm just not sure how big. And keeping it away from Riverside Avenue so you don't get the canyon effect, push it off, making sure that there are open plazas. What made the Galt project work so well is the open plaza. And that needs to be emulated so that we see the water, not just the water, but the vista across the river to the other side. So it gives this open feel at the same time while changing it and moving it forward.
And you can't see the river right now. I mean, that marina, you would not know that there's a river there as you approach the train station on Riverside Avenue.
Right, and we have the opportunity now to open that up. That's the planning part. That's what can make this really work, is we take all the property that they have envisioned and make it work together. If you remove the white building that's there and open it up and say, here's the river again, and here are beautiful shops, and here's a nice place to live, here's a hotel if you want to come, take the train from New York City. This could work. It's just a matter of making sure that they do it correctly and don't just overbuild for the sake of overbuilding because there's a money figure that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. So you've got, you're really wearing two hats in this, both with the chamber and with an RTM, as an RTM member representing the district.
Oh yeah, I have quite the hat tree at home, and it flips on and off all the time. I try to do my best to keep them separate. Sometimes they do blend here. Clearly there's a blend here, but my desire to improve Saugatuck has always been my ideal. And if I can make that happen, then I will, whether it's through the RTM or a chamber. The goal is to make Westport and Saugatuck better.
And it's interesting. Saugatuck is always changing. It changed from the Italian working class, tight-knit, wonderful neighborhood when I-95 came through. It changed again with the Galt project that was originally opposed by a lot of people.
Yep.
So Saugatuck is not static. But it's clear you've got a real feel for Saugatuck. Do you want to talk about the slice?
Well, the slice of Saugatuck, again, as an RTM member, I saw that Saugatuck was changing. We just had the Galt project. Only half of it had been built at that time. What is now Matchburger Lobster, that was still the old gas station. I think at that point it was still a coffee shop.
Doc's Cafe.
Doc's Cafe. And so I said, hey, let's give this idea of a free food day to celebrate the restaurants. And Sam Galt, I went to him and I said, listen, can you put up $1,000 for the bond, for the insurance, for the bond for the town of Westport to give me the opportunity? He goes, yeah. And I said, you'll get it back. And he said, okay, if I get it back, I'm there. And so we did it and got Viva Zapatas and Dunvilles together and the Mansion Clam House. And they were the original driving force to make it happen. And so we had about 27 businesses at that time, and we did it. And people loved it. I had one band playing on that plaza right by the Welk before it was actually opened. The only thing that was open at that time was Fleischer's Butchery, or it was called Craft Butchery at the time. And they butchered a pig, a demonstration, to show what was going on.
Grossed out a lot of people.
Yeah, but it showed what the business was. And people were very fascinated. Yeah, exactly. Don't watch the sausage being made. And so we did it, and then went back to them and said, okay, let's do this again. And, some grumbling. You never get 100% buy-in. There's always someone who's saying, no. But, you push it forward. And the next year we charged $5 so we could put some money. And we decided that if we made some money, we could make a donation to Homes with Hope. The idea was this is a food festival, so people paid for their food, but ultimately with the ticket, but got free tastes all around. And the money that we made, we could give to the Gillespie Food Pantry. And Jeff Weezer, who was then the director, we worked it out. Jeff and I have a funny comment that we always talk about each other, was that the Democrat runs the Chamber of Commerce and the Republican ran the homeless shelter. So he and I are good buddies, and he's now the moderator of the RTM. And so we did it. And that was 2011, 2012. And this past year, we celebrated the 10th anniversary. We gave another $5,000 donation to Homes with Hope, pushing the donations over $40,000 for its entire time. And again, over 2,000 people came out. And I said to the guys down there, the ones that are, wondering about whether they still should be doing it, because it's a pain. They give away free food. It's difficult to have the people. Yeah, it's labor intensive. And I said, look, I'm doing my job. I'm putting 2,000 people at your doorstep. Now it's your job to get them across the transom, not mine. So now it's up to you. But that's what I do. I bring people to the businesses, and then it's up to them to make them stay, make them new customers.
And you bring people to the dog park with the Dog Festival.
Well, Dog Park is technically slightly off, from on the side. This is the main area of the park itself.
Okay. You said there were some people who were, not totally into the slice. Is there anybody not into the Dog Festival?
Well, there were some people wondering how I'm using such a piece of property, town-owned property. And I said, well, you ask for permission, you come up with an idea, you go to the Parks and Rec Commission, you pitch them and say, hey, I want to do this. And they said, that's really good. And once again, what we do as a chamber, and unlike most other chambers, and we're a nonprofit, a suffering nonprofit that's hand to mouth most of the time, because that's what nonprofits are. We still give a donation to local nonprofits that are dog related. And each year, about $6,000, $7,000 from those proceeds go to those nonprofits. And we have 60 vendors out there. They're happy as clams to be there, because we have 3,000 people come. Goes to all those businesses. They meet all those businesses. But the best part, there are 1,000 dogs that come, and everybody who loves dogs gets to check them out. And, you've been there. Demonstrations, obstacle courses. The police are involved with their demonstrations, canine demonstrations. It's a hell of a day. It's
pretty cool. You got to do something about the weather, though. I think you're always postponed by a week.
Oh, I have problems with that event where the Slice of Saugatuck hasn't been rained out in its 10 years of running. The Dog Festival probably rains out twice every year, and still we put it on. But that's just one. And then Supper and Soul, of course, is indoors, so we don't have to worry about the weather. Although someone said, your luck, you'd have a gigantic snowstorm, and the band wouldn't be able to make it. Of course, COVID stopped the band from coming one time, too. So you roll with the punches.
Is Supper and Soul a tough sell to get that concept across to people?
Oh, that was an easy one. People just bought into it very quickly, and the town bought into the idea. Jim Marpy was very supportive of it, and away it went. And we started, of course, at the Seabury Center at Christ and Holy Trinity Church, and we outgrew it. Part of it was that the acoustics in there are too perfect, and a rock show just was too much in there. I would love to do like an Indian classical concert in there with no amplification, just because I think it would work. But switching over here to the Trev's Forum and the magnificent stage and the sound system that we have here, it's great.
We've talked a lot about business and entertainment and all that, but you're also, as I mentioned at the top, very preservation minded. Where does that come from?
I've always been a tree hugger, I think. There was one of the oldest trees in the Bronx and Riverdale that was going to be cut down, and it was going to be cut down because it was 1 inch shy of the city border or the property line. And I actually got a guy into the tree to hang there for 12 hours to try to save it. Ultimately, we didn't make it. But yeah, I moved from the Bronx and was hanging out on Partridge Road with my in-laws and my was it future wife at that time? No, she was the wife at the time, my wife at the time. And there was a development taking place next door. And they wanted to put 2 houses next to it because of clustered housing. And we went and talked to them, and I said, look, we understand that you own the property. You put 1 house there, cool. We understand that. 2 houses, aren't you pressing the envelope? And they said, well, we can. And I said, maybe you can't. And so I organized the people there while I was still living in the Bronx and coming up on weekends, organized the area. And I said, you know what? Putting in that many houses in an environmentally sensitive wetland area would be irresponsible. And it took 5 years to break the back of the developers. And in the end, we made a deal with them that they could build 13 houses, not the 33 that they started out with, or 31 that they started out with. and they built them on the north side over by Newtown Turnpike. And 22 acres was donated to the organization that I created, the Partridge Wetlands Preservation Fund. In the end, the Partridge Wetlands Fund donated the land to Earth Place, and I came along with them. So that's why I've been at Earth Place since that time in 2007. While we're doing that, we have friends in Norwalk helping us out because they didn't want the overdevelopment there. The sewer line was going to come along Newtown Turnpike from Norwalk, skirting Westport's rules and regulations. And they said, we don't like that either. But at the same time, the White Barn Theater was in trouble. It was decaying away, and they wanted to save it. And so I took the principles that we learned from Partridge and moved it into the White Barn Theater, and we saved 5 acres of that land, and so forth and so on. And then again, the Norden property next to the Westport border, they were going to build 3 apartment buildings, and we stopped them, and they only built 1. And the rest of the land was saved, and they're supposed to build 4 single-family homes, which never are going to occur now. So that land's all saved, and after the Hiawatha thing gets built, all those people are going to be able to go behind them into that land and enjoy 11 acres of open space.
So it's clear that you love Westport. I mean, you love the people, you love the businesses, you love the vibrancy. What specifically about this town speaks to you?
I think I like that it's a New England small town, and I think we have taken advantage of that. I love the arts background of it. That's why we're here in Westport, because my mother-in-law worked at the Lucille Lortel Theater as a teenager, liked it, and said, you know what, I want to come live here. So I think that just permeated through. And growing up in the Bronx and Manhattan, I got tired of the city. And I love this place. I love the river going through it. I love the beach, Longshore, the Levitt Pavilion, the Westport Country Playhouse, you name it. We have got one of the best towns in Connecticut, and it's worth making better, but most of all, it's worth preserving it as well.
What don't you love?
What don't I like? Sometimes the wealth can become an issue where people are always saying, me, me, me. But a lot of them over the long term realize the town is what it is, and that they adapt to it more and put that money to good use rather than just for themselves. And I think that's another thing I like about it. There's a lot of giving. A lot of the wealth that's here, instead of being just a personality folks, they put it in nice places. The library, Levitt, and other things, and helping the homeless and hungry as well.
We've seen a huge influx of new people during COVID. Westport had more new residents during the pandemic than any other municipality in Connecticut. Do they know about the chamber? Do they know about what's going on? Are they getting involved, and are you reaching them?
First of all, they came here because Westport's a cool place. And I think that's something that everybody should realize. That why did they pick us? Because it was a great place. Are they getting involved? Slowly but surely they are. They're a different demographic. There are a lot of young families, which is sometimes difficult to reach because they're not out and about the same way. They're focused on the schools. They're focused on getting their kids to baseball. We are getting to them. They're becoming involved, and you see their influence. And the point is, did they come here because they want to make where this place where they came from? Or they come here because they liked it and want to keep it the way it is. And I think that's where we're going to have to find out ultimately where it shakes out.
Last question, and this is great. I've learned a lot, and it's been fun. The President of the United States comes to Westport. You've got 30 minutes. His handlers say you've got 30 minutes to show him the town. You don't have to worry about traffic because he's got his motorcade. So what do you do in your 30 minutes with the president showing Westport?
Take him to a restaurant, sit down and talk. Take him right here to the library and say, this is the coolest library in the entire country. And then show him around. Just have him walk around downtown, down in Saugatuck, and say, this is the community. This is one of your communities. And thanks for giving the ARPA money, because we're spending it well, and we're going to do better and continue to do better. And we can and will.
Great. Anything I should have asked that I didn't?
No, I think you did pretty well. I could probably talk for an hour and a half, about the town and things that we're doing and where we're going and what I plan to do. But half an hour is it, and that's fine.
Okay, so that is, you did prompt one last question. Things you want to do. Any projects that you're thinking of that you haven't announced yet and will announce here on the podcast for the first time?
I think that Westport needs to be protected from some of the stuff that's going on in the state. I don't think they understand that we are a diverse community, a community that means well and is doing well. And, another voice up there in Hartford might be a good thing, and that voice might be mine. I think it's known that I've been, looking at that for a while. My good friend Jonathan Steinberg sitting up there, and no intention of getting in his way. But at some point, if Jonathan decides that it's time to move on, I think another voice going up there would be a good thing for Westport, someone who supports Westport and knows Westport well.
Awesome. Matthew Mandell, president of the Chamber of Commerce, RTM member, Westport Booster. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this. And thank you for your blog. It's wonderful. It's really the voice of the people. You get out there and let people know what's going on. And that takes a lot of effort. I know it takes a lot of effort. Thanks for doing it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You got it.